welcome to episode 6 of Plays Well with Others. I'm Jess Agnew, and I'm joined by our normal host, but also our special guest for this episode, Andrew Moore. Andrew's worked across a number of different industries, including healthcare and mortgage, government, and I believe manufacturing as well. He has 15 years of experience as a developer, as just a normal developer, but also as an executive level. So is able to kind of speak to us from a lot of different layers within an organization. I actually personally started out my product management experience with Andrew as the lead developer on the team. So we kind of learned this together. We both went through extensive training, but we put it into practice in a live environment in a couple of different companies together now. So Andrew, introduce yourself a little bit more, maybe give us an idea of where you want to start out talking today.
So first off, I did my own introduction in episode 1. If you haven't heard episode 1, go back and listen to it. But I should have just let you do it because that was way better. And I'm going to assume that you had my LinkedIn open because you pretty much got it verbatim. So there's not much else I can say about.
So that's, yeah.
Fair. There's not much else I can say about my experience, but to add color, the idea for this podcast, Plays Well with Others, was that we wanted to help individuals and teams understand their roles and to give really actionable techniques and skills and thoughts that help everybody work more effectively together. And I've drawn a line in the sand at the beginning of this and said, this is not a technology podcast. It just happens to be that we're technologists, and a lot of the people that we know are technologists. So there's a bit of flavor that we sprinkle in there of technology. But the thought process is that everything we talk about, most of what we talk about, can be applied to just about any industry and any practice. But where we were talking about today, we got back last week with Travis Sims or Jeremy Sims from Evolve Consulting, and we were actually getting back on track with the core of what this podcast is, which is the idea that we want to provide some actionable intel, provide some understanding of how different functions, different teams work together. And so now here I am as our second developer guest. And throughout my career, like Jess said, I've worked in just about every kind of industry you can imagine. And somehow mostly working in industries where data protection and data governance are uber critical. So government contracting, healthcare, finance. So it's been a wild ride, and my skills have developed not just to be purely technical skills, but as I've taken on more people leadership roles and strategic leadership roles, I've been able to use the fact that I've been the individual contributor. I've been the boots on the ground. I've been the guy that got the arbitrary deadline at the last minute that, hey, this thing's got to be out there because reasons. So I understand where the issues are and where the pain points lie. And I use that knowledge and that experience to help influence how I make decisions now as a strategic leader.
So one thing that I find really fascinating about your career, Andrew, and about your perspective as a developer is that I've never, in all our years of working with you, ever heard you box yourself into a corner of only thinking about what a developer might need to think about. You always take that extra step to understand the layers around you. And we talked a little bit about this in the last episode where you said that you should always know like one layer up. And I do think that that's something that you do really well. And I'm curious to learn kind of how you got to that and how you continue to kind of take those steps to be proactive about thinking things through on that next layer.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm not sure I know exactly why that's ingrained in me, but a lot of my personality and a lot of what I believe to be true is that people all have similar or equal value, and all of our jobs are just different jobs. They're different roles, they're different titles. And just because you have a bigger title than somebody else, it doesn't mean that you're more important. It means that you have a different role. And for me, when I started working in technology, when I started my path towards engineering, I'd always said, I don't want to be a developer. I don't like the idea of sitting at a desk and writing code and not doing the planes, trains, and automobiles thing. Because at the time I was doing IT consulting, and every day was a new person, a new place, a new job, a new problem. And I just couldn't see how software development would scratch that same itch. And I started developing, and it was what I feared it to be for 6 months, maybe a year. And at that point, I didn't care for the job, but it paid the bills, and it was all right. And then at some point, I got plugged in enough and exposed enough to what we were actually trying to do that I did see the opportunity for every day to be a new and exciting problem. And I just kind of fell into that approach of, yes, I am a developer, and that's what my name badge says, but I happen to be a problem solver that uses code to solve problems. And that's just always how I've approached anything, any problem set. If I can solve it with code, then great, because that happens to be a strength in my toolbox. But if it's a process change, if I can figure out how to fit somebody's needs with, an already in place technology, an already deployed code, or a workaround, even if I can solve that problem for them right there at the time that they need it, then they go off feeling better. And then that gives me time to think about what could be. Mm-hmm. And I've done that a lot. And one of the things that I've always said, particularly to you, Jess, whenever somebody asks me, hey, can we do such and such? Well, yeah. I'm an engineer, of course.
He always
of course
says,
we can.
He always says we can do anything.
Right.
The question is, should we?
I'm going to go back. Exactly. We're going to quote the great philosopher Jeff Goldblum. And that's the core. Should we do the thing? And if the answer is yes, then let's do the thing. It may mean more money, more time, more effort, whatever. But if we can, and we should, then let's do it. If someone says can't, well, that's a 4-letter word, and we're going to have a conversation, because we probably can. It's just either we don't want to, or it's going to be exorbitantly expensive, or it's going to take forever, or it's going to be ugly, or something. And
some myriad of reasons.
When you get into the can't land, right? When you get into can't land, you can always engineer your way out into some better position.
So you said a couple of really great points in there. One of the things that, you kind of have this natural inclination, I think, to immerse yourself in solving bigger problems and being a resource for those around you. And that has been such a incredible benefit for me from a product standpoint. And I'd love to talk a little bit about how having a developer product relationship can enhance really everything that you're turning around and everything that you're developing. And really the end product that you're putting out can't be better served than by having this really good relationship between development and product ownership. One of the things that I've been able to do, just because you've been my partner, is that I can just kind of walk into a room and know that I'm going to have a resource that's going to be able to help spin the conversation in the right direction. So I know that I can come in and we can start talking through business value. What are they trying to achieve? What's the business want to get out of something? And really, my focus is less on what can we do technically. My focus is more on, like, what is the business trying to derive out of this thing that we're asking for? Okay, you've given me a solution, but you haven't told me the problem. Let's get down to the problem statement. Let's get down to what you're trying to achieve. And that's kind of where my realm is going to be, is really trying to break down into smaller pieces what we're trying to actually deliver from a product perspective. And then I can have you in the room with me, and immediately I know that I'm going to have someone there who's going to help me facilitate the conversation around, not solutioning it in the room with the business person bringing the request, but you're going to help talk about what's possible and bring new ideas to the table that maybe none of us would have even thought of because you're looking at it from a development standpoint. And I think the fact that we have that mutual respect and understanding in that conversation allows us to have a more profitable conversation in the room with our business stakeholders as well.
Yeah, so I think there's some really tactical and practical advice that I can provide there. And for the developers listening, the best thing I can tell you is you have to develop trust with your product owner, with your project manager, whoever's managing or deriving those business specifications, those acceptance criteria, and the overall value statement. You've got to have mutual trust. And Jess and I have developed that over years of just going through stuff together in work. But in reality, by simply opening up a line of conversation and providing some value initially to say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Product Owner, I understand that this is what you said was the requirement, but are you aware that I'm able to do X, Y, Z? And I think that may solve the problem better, faster, or even I've seen product owners that go to the length of designing UI and UX and saying, I want this button here and I want it to be red and I want it to be green on Tuesdays. By coming to that product owner in a respectful way and saying, hey, look, I get this and I understand it. And I appreciate that you got this requirement from your business user, or you developed this for whatever reason. But have you considered that by moving it over here, I think it'll be more accessible because I've been around the block in this product and I know how people use it? Or, hey, look, I know you want these things highlighted, but that's going to create a significant performance issue. And instead of the page loading in 500 milliseconds, it's going to load in a second and a half. Well, okay, let's have that conversation. And on the other side, say looking at it differently, if you are in a position as a developer and you're going to that room with the stakeholders, with the business units, or with the non-technical folks, allow your product owner to drive the boat, because it's their skin in the game. It's their relationship. They're the ones that need to have the confidence in the other people in the room. But when you can support them, you don't have to correct them. You don't have to say, hey, you're wrong. But what you can do is say, okay, I think I understand the problem here. I understand what you're getting at. And oftentimes with Jess, for me, it was sitting quietly in the corner of the room for the whole meeting, or perhaps for 3 or 4 meetings in a row. And at some point we'd get the whole picture, and I'd get the whole picture, and I'd say, okay, well, what I hear you saying is you need to get these documents from A to B, and in the middle there, you need to verify that they all exist. And oftentimes that's stated a lot simpler than what the ask was, because they have a whole lot of context. They being potentially the product owner, being the business user, this is what they do. And so they don't put it in simple terms because it's not simple. It's complex for them. There's a lot of stuff. But what you can do as a technologist, and I'll say anybody that has a technical mind, we have a way of seeing systems a lot more simply than most, just because of the critters we wrangle on a day-to-day basis. Kubernetes clusters with thousands of containers, thousands of pods, or VMs that have 42 applications deployed and scheduled tasks that trigger things. There's a whole bunch to it. And so we distill things down into their core components. So as a technologist in the room, you can help by saying, here's the core of what I think you're saying or what you're needing. What if, and hear me out here, what if we were to look at the problem this way instead of how we've been designing it, which is, and I'll coin another phrase that I like to use a lot. It's a paper problem in a digital world. So we take the process that we've developed over decades of working with paper, faxes in healthcare, that's still a thing, or paper documents in mortgage lending.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times we invent new process, new automation, new efficiencies by simply taking the inefficient process that we had and making a computer do it at 2 a.m. It's effective, but is it the best, most efficient way? Not likely, and almost never. So with you as a technologist, recall, and I'll do my 3-point bullets here, but you recall, you have to build trust with your product owner, and you can do that by providing value and being respectful. You have to listen to the problem. You have to understand the problem. And then 3, provide value off of that foundation of trust and understanding. Once you understand the problem, once you know that your product owner has your back and vice versa, you can then say, as a developer, as an engineer, as a whatever you are, I think I see a simpler solution or a better solution, more advanced solution that we can develop in the same amount of time or faster. And it gives us a jumping off point to educate our end users, educate our business stakeholders so that they get a glimpse of what is possible, what can be done.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because, looking at things from a product management standpoint, you're going to be in the room trying to deal with these large, complex problems, trying to understand the perspective of, the issues or the needs or whatever that's going on with your stakeholder. You're also going to be on the flip side when you're implementing change, right? You're going to be out there working with UAT testers, seeing how things actually work in the real world, making sure that what we did in development actually gets implemented in the real world in an effective manner. Those kind of where the technology meets the business is very much your area of expertise. Everything in between where all of that development is happening is some of the funnest things that I get to now observe, right? Because I've been in the room trying to distill down the complex problem into, a user story that explains what we're trying to achieve. Maybe it's a large user story that's an epic that you then drill down into smaller pieces, whatever that might look like. But these are actually trying to distill down the business need. So then when you hand it off to the development team, that's where the fun stuff kind of starts to happen. Because if you've successfully set up your development team, you've given them knowledge, you've given them very specific results that you're trying to achieve, you've outlined this criteria of what will mean success for them. And then your development team can go and be creative. And that is so cool when that happens. And there's a lot standing in the way of making that happen. A lot. Some of it's just business people who know enough to be dangerous and solution for you and have told everyone that's the solution before you even get a chance to work on it. And that's heartbreaking because then you're not getting the best solution because you don't have the right people solutioning. But if you can make that happen, if you can set your development team up for success, one of my favorite things is kind of watching these great minds that I work with come up with really creative, really powerful solutions to problems that we didn't know how to solve.
That's where it's so important for your engineering, your technology leadership to be aware of the horsepower that they have at their fingertips. And I think it's important that not only do you have technical leadership, people that may not be the best person to write code, because that, for me, I can write code as good as the next guy because I'm psychotic and I'm a stickler for organization and structure. But if you want to solve a problem quickly and you want to do it at enterprise scale, I'm living at the Lego bricks stage now. So, if you want the person that's writing that enterprise grade code, it's probably not me anymore, and it's probably not your technical managers either. But if you have a technical manager, you are a technical manager that's aware of how to empower teams, how to empower individuals, then that becomes incredibly valuable. And one of the ways that I've seen that happen is in a past team of mine that was in a position where they were segregated from the business. They were not ever able to talk to their end users. And that was partially a cultural thing, partially a training thing. We didn't have developers that had been encouraged to develop soft skills. And so as a result, folks weren't terribly comfortable talking to developers and vice versa. But in the course of Jess and I building a team and to build up an agile framework, an agile process, that was a requirement. We had to have the ability for developers to understand what it was that they were solving for. And the best way for us to do that wasn't to play the man in the middle game where Jess goes to talk to the business user, figures out what they're doing, and then she re-explains it to the developer, and then the questions go back and forth and back and forth. We had one developer in particular that was very much no nonsense. And I was always a little bit, not nervous, but it's like, should I just let them go and just interact with whoever they needed to? And I think the most telling point was when we had a ticket that they were working on, and it came back from UAT as this isn't working. And they looked at it, they walked through it, said, yes, this is working. Well, it's not working how I thought it was. And so they went down there to the department, found the person, and said, look, this is how this works in your department, because I know this is how this works because I've seen it. And I sat there, probably mouth agape, like, uh-oh, this is going to be ugly. And the business user turned around and said, oh, yeah, actually, you're right. And when that developer moved on to another project, the business users came back and said, wait, we really liked that developer because they always told us what was going on. They always told us how our processes worked. And so when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about truly digital organizations. What we built there was nothing that Jess and I could have done on our own. We built a thing, a big effective thing that was made up of people that all understood what we were trying to accomplish and all understood the players involved, the challenges, the risks, and they were able to make individual decisions on a minute by minute basis that in previous organizational history would have taken days, because they would have had to escalate to their manager, to their team lead, who would have had to escalate to the manager, to the VP, to the CEO, whatever. And it would have been this big game of hurry up and wait. And we traded that off for have smart, responsible people and allow them to make decisions. And they ran with it. It was fantastic.
It is actually really one of my favorite things to watch a team evolve into trusting each other. And it doesn't happen overnight, but I think there are some very key steps that as a leader, as a product owner, as, even just a person on the team, that you can kind of distill down into getting that camaraderie. And Andrew mentioned one of them before, which is understanding and valuing every person on the team for the role that they're contributing to the team. I've been on teams before where somebody was disparaging to QA. No, they are incredibly important to making everything run smoothly. Your QA team is an integral part of the entire process. If you're not respecting and appreciating the value that they're contributing, you're missing out. Similar with, operations, help desk. Sometimes people are, oh, well, it's just help desk. No, they're such a crucial part of making the entire process successful. Who do you think that end user who picks up your code is going to call the moment something's not working like they expected it to? And now you have either a bug ticket created because help desk and you guys don't get along and they just threw it over the wall at you, or you have a team who's actively understanding and supporting what's been pushed out and is able to communicate effectively with that end user. So it all comes full circle. So that, I think, is step one, is just making sure that each team member within technology understands and appreciates what the other team member is capable of and what they're doing and what they're contributing. And I do think, Andrew, you also hit the nail on the head with one of the other ones, which is allowing each person on the team to have a voice where it matters. And that, I think, just as a leader and as a whole, is something that I've seen fumbled. I've seen it go really well. And there's a story I've heard before, and I can't remember who told it. So if I think of it, I will have Andrew put it into the notes on wherever we're posting this. But basically saying that this person came up with a solution to solve a problem at their work, and their boss was like, "Oh no, that's not how we do it." Okay, well, did I upset anyone? Did I miss a step that was important? Was the solution not accurate? No, everything's fine. You just didn't follow the process. And that kind of blind adherence to process over people can be a really big mood killer when it comes to a team. It can really take away that camaraderie that you can get as a team. So yeah, if something's missed, if somebody gets upset, if there's a problem of some sort, let's address the problem. But don't focus so much on process that you lose sight of the fact that you're creating something effective with your people.
Exactly. And so we're coming up on the end of our half hour, and you mentioned a lot of things in there that I could run with. I'll give you something for nothing to close us out. You mentioned specifically the disparaging of QA, and I've seen that relationship before, and
Don't do that.
definitely don't do that. But it comes with I'm going to say dehumanization, but it's separation. If you have teams that are independent, that are each doing their own thing, and you have another team that's designed to be, I'll say roadblock. If you have another team that's designed to catch things, to find fault, if they're on separate teams, then it's an adversarial relationship, because it's in their best interest to find fault with my work. And it's in my best interest for them to not find anything. But if they don't find anything, maybe it's perfect, but maybe it's not, and they're just not doing their job well enough. So in the spirit of playing well with others, you have to make sure as a leader, and in this case, you're likely a director of software engineering, VP software engineering, maybe even a CIO, head of technology, depending on the size of your org. You have to make sure that you're building cohesive teams that work together. And you can do that in a million different ways, but you've got to reduce the adversarial nature of the makers and the checkers, because otherwise you're going to have a situation where neither one of them is in a position to succeed if the other does. So that being said, we should get someone from QA on to the podcast, and it might be interesting to try a QA dev combo episode. But if you're interested, drop us a line, either Jess or I. I know we've worked with a lot of great QA folks, a lot of great engineers, and a lot of leaders of both. So if you're interested, give us a shout. As a closing thought, and I should have done this at the start of the episode in case you don't make it here, but if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. And please make sure, whatever you're listening to us on, if you're listening to us on an iPhone, you have the podcasts app or whatever your favorite podcast app is. Go ahead, give it a rate, give us a comment, a review. Share this with your friends, share this with your colleagues, your network. We really want to get this out there and help to provide some information that benefits somebody. And if we can do that, then we've been successful. So that is us for this episode. This has been episode 6 of Plays Well with Others. Thanks for listening.